should never accept technology from an alien force, ever, ever. I don't care how tempting it is, because it's only there to win our allegiance, and we will give our power away to it, we will give our freedom away to it eventually. These are resource explorers and economic collectives who are here seeking advantage and opportunity in a world that we are obviously mismanaging. Contact is an inevitability in our evolution. Our world is too valuable for us to damage it or destroy it without other races becoming involved here. We should recognize this. This is a context. This is a result of how we have conducted ourselves in the world, how we use the world, how we use up the world. The intervention, what I call an intervention because it is intervening, is really here for the world. That is their goal. They're not here for us. For it is here without our permission, without our invitation. It is operating with impunity in our world. It is concealing for us its presence, its purpose, its activities, and its intent. And this has been withheld from us for a very long time. And yet their presence is growing and having impact on people individually, certainly being witnessed by perhaps millions of people around the world. It's a very big event, but people are too afraid to talk about it. And in social settings, people don't want to bring it up. And governments aren't revealing. The governments who have some information about this are certainly not revealing what they know. That's pretty evident. So we have this hidden reality in our world that's actually monumental. We think of it as peripheral to our interests and even to the major events happening in the world today. But it is not peripheral. It's actually deeply involved. If they've been hiding their presence and their purpose for all this time, they have some other agenda. And that they've entered the world at a time of environmental degradation, a time following world wars, nuclear proliferation. That's how we need to begin to look at this. We're seeing polarization in the world right now on a very large scale. We have a very ugly war going on between Russia and Ukraine, which has impacts on other nations around the world, involving other nations around the world. So we're at a time of increasing conflict, competition, and the risk of greater war. So now the intervention, which seeks to preserve the planet and certainly seeks to avoid nuclear proliferation, is engaging with us on many different levels. And so I'd like to show you this image. What is the relationship between contact and change in the world? So let's start on the right-hand side, which is change created by human life and influencing alien responses. We're changing this world. We're limiting its resources. We're limiting the habitability of this world through a warming climate at an alarming rate. This has brought foreign intervention here. This has really triggered it in an active phase. Rather than just being observing us from afar, it is now engaging with us very directly, increasingly. Unbeknownst to the public, unrevealed by our government, which knows some things about this, it is happening around us. And this is making us increasingly vulnerable to foreign persuasion and intervention. So let's dispel this notion that if they were really dangerous to us, they would have attacked us or destroyed our world. The world is the prize, and they need us to work for them because they cannot live here. So we are part of the asset of the world. And destroying the environment of the world is the last thing they want to see happen, or even destroying us as a workforce is not what they seek. This is not their goal. So it's really faulty logic to think they're either here to benefit us or they're here to attack us, because there's many different possibilities between those two extremes. And any clever race in the universe who recognizes that we are warlike and destructive is going to take some kind of subtle tact in being in the world. Present but not seen. Effective but not recognized. Influencing but not seen as a source of influence. You see what I'm saying? They're using a greater cunning and intelligence now to plant themselves in the world, largely without our awareness, because they don't have our consent to be here. And they're doing things clearly that are very dangerous to us and to our future. But their purpose is to secure themselves in this world and to present themselves ultimately as a beneficial force. And many people already think they're a beneficial force because they're not attacking us. That's illogical. That rules out all the possibilities in between those two extremes that I just mentioned. So we have to begin to look at this shift of their purpose being the world, because the world is the prize. Because if we don't get this right, we're going to sell ourselves down the river. That means we will give our freedom away willingly, intentionally, stupidly, unnecessarily. They may fly with impunity in our skies, but they do not control the ground. We are in charge of the surface of the earth. And they need our approval and our agreement to be able to continue to develop their presence in the world. And for this, they must remain hidden. They're creating a vacuum of confidence. If we lose confidence in our leaders, in our institutions, in our traditions, we're going to place that confidence somewhere. And if they appear to be superior beings with superior technology, then we may just naturally transit that confidence to them with their assurance that they are here for our benefit. They don't have war, they can help us end war. You see, we fall right into a trap. If you lose confidence in your own native ability and intelligence, you seek intelligence from others. And as resources decline in the world, as environmental issues begin to strip the wealth of worlds and affect ever-growing numbers of people very dramatically, we are breaking down. We're breaking down the world we've created. We're breaking down with each other. This is the perfect divide and conquer strategy to take place. I mean, if the natives are disenchanted with their leaders, then they can be persuaded by outside forces to abandon their leaders and to seek other authorities in life to guide them. And so with environmental change comes great human suffering, great human need that's very difficult to address. And so this is part of the condition of the world that makes intervention attractive. Particularly if you can show greater technology, well, people think greater technology is greater intelligence, or they then think that greater intelligence is a higher level of morality or greater altruism, but we know that's not true from our own experience. There's nothing indicates that the intervention has a higher level of spirituality, if any spirituality, or any kind of benevolence to their approach. They seem to be highly practical and determined at whatever cost to engage us in the way they want to engage us. And they're trying to induce our compliance, and if we will not comply, they will try to discourage us and make us feel that we have no hope. Well, the foreign presence in our world certainly has dominance in our skies. I think the growing evidence is they actually dwell within our oceans, because any kind of land place that they can hide is too easily determined, too easily detected, and too easily witnessed by people on the ground. So they're beginning to change, I think, the mental environment in such a way that they are casting an influence over the way that we think. But certainly people who are influenced by the intervention seem to be very taken with it, very easily taken with it. And I think that's a real warning sign to us of the power of this presence. It's not that they're changing the physical landscape as much as they're altering the mental landscape. And I believe that much of conspiracy theories and promotions in the world today definitely has an intervention connection or even source. Not all of it, but much of it. Because what it is casting doubt and dispersion upon our leaders, their integrity, the entire government. You can't trust the government. Our institutions, our traditions, which again leaves this vacuum of confidence. People need to believe in something. So what are they going to believe in? And the intervention is here to create that bridge to them. We are here to replace that. Only we know how to achieve peace. We have no war. Only we know how to manage the world. You're failing at managing the world. Only we can teach you how to live well. And of course, they can't provide any of this. There's no evidence of this. There's no proof of this. It's all assertions. It's all narrative. But many people, because of the changing conditions of the world, are falling into this persuasion. They're taking advantage of this loss of faith and confidence. and also the breakdown of social norms. People rely on social norms to provide stability, clarity, and perpetuity in the way that they see themselves and their future and their life. So when these things begin to erode, then people become very vulnerable to other kinds of persuasions and forces. I will say this is important to know. The intervention to certain people has presented itself as our ancestors, higher spiritual beings guided by the angelic forces. We're here to save you, or we've come back at a time of critical, dire need to rescue you from yourselves. This is part of the narrative that's given to people who are taken against their will. The power of persuasion cast upon them, the inducement to believe in alien purpose, an agenda, without any real proof or evidence that those visiting powers can do any of these things they're talking about. They can promise anything in this world, because we are so mesmerized by technology that we think, well, anything that's technologically that advanced must have overcome all the problems of existence and must be of a higher mental order. See what I'm saying? People make these associations. We do that to ourselves. So we fall in line with something that is actually very dangerous and destructive and has the power to undo our freedom in this world. And so that is why I'm shifting this emphasis from contact to the people to contact to the world. This is about the world. Who is going to govern the world? There is a tremendous force in the mental environment to persuade people that the intervention is here for their benefit and that they should abide with it and support it. Otherwise, we won't survive. We won't make it. Without the intervention, we won't make it. That's the narrative from the intervention. It has nothing to do with reality, really, but it is that narrative that people so immediately gravitate towards and accept without critical thinking. Their presence here is not a military presence. It is a small exploratory presence, but with great powers of persuasion and influence. The mental environment is something human beings know about this because we use it to induce people to buy things. We use it to promote commerce. We use it politically to encourage people to even go to war or to do things they wouldn't normally do. So we know about encouraging people, inciting emotion, influencing their psychology. We have our own version of that. But in the universe around us, persuasion is operating at a much more powerful and developed level. Because this is now nations in the universe, according to the Allies of Humanity briefings, how nations influence each other without the use of force and weapons. So we're kind of not really ready for this kind of influence. And if you begin to now saturate our mental environment with anxiety of destruction or with the promise of foreign presence, you see, you're actually injecting ideas and beliefs into this environment in which we think. And we know this environment is powerful. You know, if you were to visit every house on the same block, on the same street, it would be a different mental environment. The feel of the place, not just the look, the feel of that environment. This is a mental environment. People create this mental environment where they live. They create it in their relationships. They create it when they gather. So we live with the experience of the mental environment at all times. It's pervasive. It goes unrecognized, but it's pervasive. They don't need to change the physical world because we're doing that already. They need to change the mental environment, which they have power to do. They do that through their technology. Transmitters in mountain areas, mountains that oversee cities, for example, that can have a subtle but growing effect. It's creating something in our mental environment that just wasn't there anymore. So we should now perhaps talk about the pacification program, which is part of the alien agenda. The first is to establish a physical presence in the world. The second is to influence certain individuals in the arenas of government, religion, and commerce. Certain individuals, not everybody. And the next is to create a pacification program of people they can influence directly or indirectly to begin to acquiesce to their presence, to be accepting of their presence, and to begin to think that possibly it's here for a good reason. Even if it's not doing anything to demonstrate it's here for a good reason. The more people are disturbed, the more people are emotionally upset, the more people are anxious, the easier you can inject into their environment or into a general environment a feeling of assurance from some other power. Not God, from some other force. And Adversely, to people who are resistant to that presence, you can inject a greater feeling of fear, anxiety, panic, fear of destruction, fear of failure. See what I'm saying? You can amplify trust or fear depending on who you're trying to reach or where you're focusing that kind of energy. This is where a small race of intervening forces can have great influence on great masses of people over time. This doesn't happen like in a year or a month. This is over time. And the more we degrade the world and put ourselves in harm's way, the more these powers can be, we're vulnerable to these kinds of forms of persuasion. If people are broken down enough, how many people are going to say no to that? I mean, if you're a starving person, you'll take food from anybody. And if you're emotionally starving, if you're psychologically starving, you will take assurance from anybody. They're going to discourage us if we can't be induced. And I see this for anybody who's drawn to this subject, who has a natural inclination, what I call a greater community person, who feels innately interested or drawn to the subject. I see this induction and I see this discouragement. So this is a powerful influence on our mental environment. More powerful than political persuasion, more powerful than commercial persuasion. I mean, and it's happening, it's pervasive, so you don't know where it's coming from. It's not like one person is putting out all this stuff who you can identify and question and resist. It's permeating us. Mm-hmm. Not everywhere, but certainly in places where people in large metropolitan areas, in countries that have a lot of power in the world, their influence is even greater, because we have a lot of power in the world. And if anyone can eventually prevent the intervention from happening, even technologically, it's the most powerful nations in the world. Nobody's telling us what's happening and how we should regard it and how to prepare. Take someone like me, it's a lone voice in the wilderness, and other people like me who are speaking out against the intervention and questioning its existence, its purpose, and its reality in the world. And I'm not just saying that because that's a personal opinion of mine, or I just don't like them. I don't even know them. It's not I don't like them. But it's decades of their behavior and what it's done to people. I've been around enough abductees to see how damaged they are and how that's affected their ability to function in society, how much it's eroded their own self-confidence. They feel like at the beckoning call of some of their power whenever it wants them. This is really unhealthy for people. This is very damaging to people, frankly. The intervention seems to be playing a long game. They're not in a hurry to do what they're doing. They're investing themselves in building a foundation for gaining access to this world without the use of force. How is that accomplished? By changing the mental environment and the kinds of persuasions that induces people and their decisions and their relationships with others. We should never accept technology from an alien force, ever, ever. I don't care how tempting it is, because it's only there to win our allegiance, and we will give our power away to it, we will give our freedom away to it eventually. So this is, I want to mention this one thing. One is not just power of the mental environment, it's also technological dependence over time. And, you know, we're easily hooked on technology. We're changing the world ourselves. They're not changing it for us. They're here because we are changing it. And we seem to be unable to restrain ourselves from changing it in a way that will be detrimental to us, certainly, but will also thwart their intentions for the world. So much of the change we see in the world around us is the use and misuse of the world. We're despoiling its waters, its soils, its air at a phenomenal rate. We also have to value our freedom in a universe where freedom is rare. We're living on a planet, a beautiful, abundant planet that is desired by others. These are the things we really need to think about and be with. So the first step is education and awareness. My work provides part of that education, but the education comes from many important sources, and we need that education and we need that awareness. We really have to grow up. We're still in a very adolescent phase of our human development. It's all about us individually. It's what we can have, what we want, what we can do, our freedom to do whatever we want, not to be accountable to anything, rather than what we do as collectively, what responsibilities we adopt together, how we develop unity, because in the future, if we're going to live in this greater community of life as a free and self-determined race, we will have to be a united world. We may have different groups, nationalities, sure, but we're going to have an operating functional unity. That is part of the vision of our future in the universe.